Hello, my name is Michael Salmony, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode where we talk to interesting people around open banking and fintech. And today we have one of the people who are organizing the whole rails around open banking in Europe and in places around. It's Wijnand from Berlin Group. Very welcome, Wijnand.
Yeah, hello to everyone and to you, Michael. It's good to be here, and thank you so much for inviting us to your program and for your very kind introduction. I'm very happy to be allowed to speak on behalf of Berlin Group Open Finance.
Great. Thank you, Wijnand. Maybe you could tell us a little bit, because basically you standardize the APIs, if I understand it right. And you do everything for sort of open banking, let's say the PIS and the AIS, but you go way beyond that. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing there?
Yeah, well, as you know, we are in interesting and dynamic times. Yeah, APIs are now the new normal in connecting payments and data services. And schemes can now operate their own services as an overlay on top of this and compete for customers. And they don't have the need to deploy their own rails. Yeah. PSD2 has, of course, been a huge drive towards APIs. As we know, the market had to invest heavily in the implementation of PSD2 standards. But the huge advantage is that it has created a common European backbone or railways, so to speak. Yeah, working on the basis of the pan-European EIDAS trust framework, where all the basic ingredients for API-based transaction and data services have been implemented already in the backends, and this is particularly important, and from the backends delivered to the front ends and to TPPs. Now, the implementation focus is mostly on the front ends because that is usually the easiest part to develop and implement. But as we all know, the front ends need to be supported by the backends, and this is always the more difficult part. And especially on the front to backend alignment, Europe has the quite unique opportunity to benefit from what has already been delivered in PSD2 based open banking, which is now being taken massive steps further with the new open finance and open data standards.
So by just to understand what you're saying, the front end, you mean the API which connects to fintechs and third parties, and the
Correct.
back end, you mean the sort of internal workings in a bank, which needs to then also be real time and interactive and expose all the data that is necessary. And that's a bit of a problem connecting this front and back end. Is that roughly right?
That's correct. Well, implementations on the back end are always more time consuming and require high investments. And this has now been arranged for with PSD2. We are now seeing the rise of new API access schemes in Europe, which benefit from the new open finance and open data standards. And altogether, this hugely improves time to market for new schemes and services. Yeah, especially when using harmonized and scheme neutral standards, such as from Berlin Group, because harmonized and scheme neutral standards they provide the required scalability synergies, and they safeguard investments in development, testing, and maintenance processes. And this enables the entire market to stay competitive and flexible in adopting all the new services that also the new regulations will require.
So APIs are clearly the way forward. You mentioned schemes. You're thinking of people like SPA, right, as new schemes, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, in recent years, we've seen a vast array of private and public initiatives on new payment methods and schemes being announced, together with many new regulatory initiatives that impact the market as well. So starting with PSD2 and now continuing with the EIDAS 2 regulation with OID wallets. We have seen the adoption of instant payments. We've seen a draft digital euro regulation, new PSD3 payment services regulation, and the financial data access regulation. And for any new scheme or payment method, customers expect a smooth, convenient, and secure payment experience, right? And schemes offer many features to create exactly such kind of payment experience. Now,
That's for sure. But let me just understand. You mentioned a lot of the new, like Instant and CBDC and EUID wallet. Are you doing the APIs for all of those, or are they competing initiatives essentially?
yeah, well, in fact, with, let's say, the backbone, the new European rails that was created with PSD2 and with the further evolution into open finance, Berlin Group has indeed delivered all the services that all these new schemes are asking for. Yeah, so we try to play our part, and in open banking and open finance, we have a total of 200, almost 200 organizations involved from the market supply and demand side, where we have somehow been effective in accommodating all their needs in data modeling, consent handling, SCA management, and supported services. And with this, we have delivered modern REST APIs, all based on ISO 20022. And we started to move beyond open banking standards already a few years ago. And the robust foundation that we have in PSD2 open banking is set to drive further innovation, because banks, TPPs, and other types of API access clients, they all plan to utilize these infrastructural investments for open finance and open data as well. Yeah, so responding to both market and regulatory demands. And currently, Berlin Group supports already a broad spectrum of services across various channels, including point of sale, in-app payments, e-commerce, P2P. And the range of supported services for these new schemes extends from one-off PSD2 compliant payments to more complex payment types, such as recurring and dynamic recurring payments, or multiple recurring payments as we call them, future dated payments, deferred payments, request to pay. And this also covers services like refunds, cancellations, pre-authorization, reservation of funds, along with a variety of account information services. Yeah, so for
I mean,
balances, transaction
that's super
details.
impressive, Wijnand. I mean, that you have what you said, over 200 organizations who use your standards, and also the standards themselves are incredibly broad, right? It isn't just the PIS and the AIS; it's actually loads and loads of APIs, also in different use cases, point of sale and e-commerce and mobile. I think that's very impressive. Not many people are aware of that, right? And it also goes beyond Europe, as I understand it, right? Even Kazakhstan or somebody uses Berlin Group standards. So in every dimension imaginable, you're really doing incredible work.
Yeah, it's indeed 200 organizations in the standards development. But this is separate from implementation, yeah, because Berlin Group is a technical standards body focusing only on the standards development, and we are not. We have no means to mandate the standards to the market. But the Berlin Group API frameworks have already been adopted by slightly more than 80% of the PSD2 markets, and indeed also beyond, as you mentioned, for instance, in Israel, Georgia, Ukraine, Macedonia, Moldova, all on a national scale.
That's super impressive. I mean, the only thing that I find a bit critical, one is the name. I never understood why it was called Berlin Group. I don't think that's helpful for a European or global standardization organization, but that's a little aside. The other one is more that why isn't everybody using it? Why isn't EPI using it? Why isn't CBDC using it? Why isn't every initiative using your standards?
Well, let's say collectively, all the services that we offer, they form a comprehensive suite of services that can be used for any conceivable scheme across any possible channel. And Berlin Group is working hard on direct access models as well. But as I said, we have no means to mandate implementation to the market. But all in all, it makes, of course, a lot of sense to benefit from Rails that is already provided. As Berlin Group, we firmly believe that consolidated and let's say standardized API platforms will become mainstream in the end, simply because the economics will be convincing enough for everyone involved. Yeah, so from a resource and investment perspective, it simply makes not much sense to reinvent the wheel again and again and create every time another set of additional rails. And Europe can also not afford to waste much time because big techs from outside Europe are currently enforcing their standards on the market, which already reduces the possibilities for smaller fintechs to compete.
Yeah,
And
good
we're
point.
open-minded, but we strongly believe that competing on standards is almost always a bad idea. One of the Berlin Group's guiding principles is that it is much better to compete at the service level and on the provided services than on the standards level, as this almost always leads to fragmentation with inefficient and subscale solutions where a lot of money is being burned. And the regulatory authorities may have to intervene in the end or introduce legislation afterwards to repair this.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm afraid our time has come to an end, but I mean that last point you also make is extremely valid. I mean, you see that in the mobile industry, they Vodafone and O2, and they didn't all invent their own standard, but they agreed on the GSM standard and then differed in their services and their handsets and everything else. And that surely is the lesson also to learn for us. So thank you, Wijnand. You've been most lucid. It's been really impressive what Berlin Group has done, and wish you further success in what you're doing. And thank you to all of you who are watching this. And I hope you find that interesting, and we'll have a look at a few of the other episodes that we're doing here. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Michael. It has been a real pleasure to be with you in these dynamic times.
Thank you, Wijnand.